He had been working at the marketing company for over 5 years. Every day he arrived early, stayed late, and made sure every client he handled felt cared for. He was known in the office as someone who could solve problems quickly, always with a calm tone and a smile. His work wasn't flashy, but it was consistent. He built trust not only with clients but also with colleagues. People often came to him for advice, knowing that he would help without making anyone feel small. He had grown attached to the place in his own way, seeing it not just as a workplace, but as a place where he had created a small part of his identity. That morning, the sun hadn't fully risen yet, and the streets were quiet as he made his way to the office. He greeted the receptionist with a nod and settled into his routine. He checked emails, prepared reports, and made calls, never expecting that today would be different. Around mid-morning, his manager asked him to come into the office. At first, he thought it might be about a new client or a project update, maybe a promotion. But as he walked in, he noticed the serious look on the manager's face. It was nothing like the casual chats they usually had. The manager didn't waste time. He started talking about budget cuts and restructuring, words that sounded abstract but carried a heavy weight. He tried to soften it, mentioning how valuable his contributions had been and how hard the decision was. But the words felt empty, like a bandage on a wound that was already deep. He was being let go, fired, for saving money, they said. A strange combination of disbelief and hurt washed over him. He had spent years proving his worth, yet in a single conversation, it seemed to mean nothing. He didn't shout or argue. Instead, he listened quietly, nodding at the right moments, though his mind was racing. How could they do this? How could they overlook everything he had done? He thought of the long nights preparing campaigns, the weekends he spent helping clients, and the countless times he went beyond what was asked. He had believed loyalty and hard work mattered. He had been wrong, at least according to this moment. When the meeting ended, he packed his things slowly. Every item in his office seemed suddenly symbolic. The notes he had scribbled over the years, the pictures from team events, even the coffee mug with a tiny chip on the rim, all of it reminded him of how much he had invested in a place that no longer valued him. His colleagues whispered as he walked by, their faces a mix of sympathy and discomfort. No one knew what to say, and he didn't have the energy to explain either. Walking out of the office felt like leaving a part of himself behind, a part that had worked tirelessly and had been quietly proud of what he accomplished. Outside, the air felt different. The usual morning noises seemed muted, almost indifferent to his personal upheaval. He walked to his car slowly, thinking about what came next. There was anger, sure, but also a strange clarity. If he allowed himself to focus on the hurt, it might consume him. He needed to think, plan, and survive. Losing this job wasn't the end of him. It was a moment of redirection, and yet the sting of betrayal was real. They had cut him loose to save money, but in the process, they were underestimating the value he brought to the company. A value that wasn't measured in spreadsheets or budgets. As the day went on, he contacted a few trusted friends outside work. He didn't want to seem weak, but he needed someone to talk to. Their support was comforting, reminding him that his worth wasn't tied to a single company. He remembered all the small victories over the years, the client who had once been unhappy but left glowing reviews, the campaigns that exceeded expectations, the moments when he had quietly stepped in to fix mistakes that no one else noticed. These weren't just accomplishments on paper. They were proof of his capability, of the trust he had built. He also reflected on the client he had brought into the company years ago, the one who had become the largest source of revenue. That client trusted him personally. They called him directly when issues arose and relied on his guidance for major decisions. He knew their needs better than anyone else in the company. The thought of leaving them behind under someone else's care made him uneasy. He had nurtured that relationship carefully, understanding that it wasn't just about contracts or payments, but about human connection, reliability, and consistency. The following days were difficult. He updated his resume, reached out to contacts, and began exploring options. But even amid the uncertainty, he noticed something unsettling. The client he had managed so well began experiencing issues. Responses were slower, emails went unanswered, and projects stalled. He couldn't help but feel a mix of satisfaction and concern. Satisfaction because he knew his absence was being felt. Concern because he genuinely cared about the client and their success. The company had fired him to save money, but they were starting to see that money wasn't the same as value. He started jotting down ideas quietly, thinking about how he could offer his skills in a new way. He didn't want revenge. That wasn't his style. What he wanted was fairness and recognition for the work he had done and the expertise he had built. He began exploring consulting options, imagining a scenario where he could help clients directly, without the bureaucracy and short-sighted decisions of a company that didn't appreciate him. Every plan he made was grounded in experience and relationships, and in the knowledge that real success wasn't about cutting costs, it was about delivering results and building trust. Evenings were the hardest. Sitting alone in his apartment, he replayed the conversation over and over. The casual way they mentioned saving money felt like a personal dismissal of everything he had invested. He allowed himself to feel the frustration and the sadness, because ignoring it would have been dishonest. But after the initial wave passed, he shifted focus to action. He started small, reaching out to old contacts, making connections, and quietly sharing his availability. He realized that his network wasn't just a tool. It was a reflection of the relationships he had built over years of genuine work. And those relationships were stronger than any corporate decision. The fire of motivation grew quietly. He didn't need to prove them wrong in a dramatic way. The client would speak for itself. The next step was about preparation, about ensuring that when the right opportunity came, he would be ready. He spent hours researching trends, refining strategies, and thinking creatively about how to present solutions in a way that only someone with years of direct experience could. Each idea reminded him of why he had been successful in the first place: patience, attention to detail, and a focus on people rather than numbers alone. He also started keeping notes on what the company was doing wrong in his absence. Small mistakes, missed opportunities, and poor communication all stood out. It was almost a quiet reassurance that his intuition about his value had been correct. They might have thought firing him was saving money, but the reality was slowly revealing itself. Without him, the company's most important client was struggling. That thought kept him both grounded and strategic, reminding him that sometimes patience and observation were more powerful than confrontation. By the end of the first week, he'd come to a personal understanding. Losing the job was painful, yes, but it wasn't the end of his story. It was an opening, a chance to take control of his career in a way he hadn't been able to before. He had the experience, the skills, and the relationships to make something new happen. More importantly, he had learned that recognition wasn't something a company could grant. It was something that came from real results and real people appreciating what you do. The next chapter wasn't written yet, but he was ready to start it, quietly and deliberately, knowing that the work he had done and the connections he had made would guide him forward. After leaving the office, he spent the first few days mostly in quiet reflection. The shock of being let go had faded slightly, replaced by a mix of frustration and determination. He realized that while the company had made their decision, his own path was still completely in his hands. Being fired didn't erase his skills or the relationships he had built over the years. It didn't change the way clients trusted him or the way colleagues respected his work. He reminded himself constantly that this was just a chapter in a longer story. It's not the end. He began to take stock of what he had accomplished during his time at the company. The long hours, the constant problem solving, the patience with difficult clients, all of it had been part of building a reputation that couldn't simply be dismissed. He remembered specific moments, the time a major client had called late at night with an urgent request, and he had stayed up to make sure it was completed perfectly. The time he had calmed a frustrated client by listening patiently and suggesting solutions they hadn't even considered. These memories gave him a quiet confidence that no corporate decision could take away. During the following week, he made a conscious effort to reconnect with friends and professional contacts outside of work. Some reached out immediately after hearing the news, offering words of support and encouragement. Others were surprised to hear from him, but welcomed the conversation. Every interaction reminded him that his value wasn't limited to the company that had let him go. People appreciated his integrity, his knowledge, and the care he put into his work. This realization lifted some of the weight from his shoulders, giving him a sense of possibility that had been missing since the firing. He also spent time reflecting on his approach to work. He realized that much of what he did had been shaped by the company's structure and culture. Now that he was outside that environment, he could think creatively about how he wanted to apply his skills. He started brainstorming ideas for consulting, freelancing, and other independent opportunities. Each idea he wrote down was practical, grounded in his experience, and focused on delivering real value to clients. He wasn't just thinking about making money. He was thinking about doing work that mattered, work that would be recognized for its impact rather than hidden behind company policies. Meanwhile, he couldn't ignore the client he had nurtured for years, the one responsible for a large portion of the company's revenue. Even though he had no formal role with them anymore, he paid close attention to how things were going. He noticed that the company's service had started to falter. Emails went unanswered, deadlines slipped, and communication felt less personal. He felt a mix of satisfaction and concern. Satisfaction because he had always known the value he brought, and concern because he genuinely cared about the client's success. He had spent years building trust, and now he could see the impact of his absence. The client reached out to him unexpectedly. They mentioned difficulties with the company, describing frustration with delays and lack of guidance. He listened carefully, offering advice without pushing his own agenda. It was a delicate balance. He wanted to help without overstepping or creating conflict. Their response reminded him that relationships were more than contracts or invoices. Trust was built over time through consistent effort and genuine attention to people's needs. And that trust had not disappeared simply because he no longer worked for the company, as he considered his options. He realized that he could approach this moment strategically. He didn't need to react impulsively or emotionally. Instead, he could focus on preparing himself for the right opportunity. He started organizing his portfolio, documenting successful campaigns, and writing down lessons he had learned over the years. Each note reinforced his confidence, showing him that he had not only survived challenges in the past, but had thrived because of his ability to adapt and deliver results. He also used this time to improve his skills further. He read industry articles, attended online workshops, and experimented with new tools and techniques. Even without a formal job, he was actively investing in himself. This period of learning and reflection reminded him that growth didn't depend on a title or a paycheck. It came from curiosity, dedication, and a willingness to continue moving forward despite setbacks. Socially, he became more proactive as well. He joined professional groups online, participated in discussions, and reached out to people whose work he admired. These connections were not just networking. They were opportunities to learn and to share knowledge. Each interaction reinforced the idea that his expertise had value beyond the walls of the company he had left. The more he engaged, the more he realized that the professional world was larger and more dynamic than he had allowed himself to see while employed full-time. One evening, he took a long walk, reflecting on the changes he was experiencing. The initial feelings of anger and disappointment had shifted to something more constructive, a sense of purpose. He knew that being fired was painful, but it had also created space for new opportunities. He imagined what it would be like to run his own projects, to work with clients who truly appreciated his attention to detail, and to have control over his career in ways he hadn't before. The possibilities felt exciting, almost liberating. Even if the journey ahead was uncertain, he also thought about the company that had let him go. They had acted in what they believed was their financial interest, yet he could already see the cracks appearing. The client he had served so diligently was struggling without the guidance he had provided. This observation wasn't about revenge. It was simply a reminder of the tangible value he had created. And the fact that sometimes companies overlook what is most important in favor of short-term savings? Understanding this gave him perspective and motivation. He knew that the company's decision was temporary in its effect. His own career trajectory was what truly mattered in the following days. He began to take small, deliberate steps toward creating his own opportunities. He reached out to contacts in a careful, professional manner, letting them know that he was available for consulting work. He emphasized how his expertise could help them solve real problems efficiently. The response was encouraging. People remembered the quality of his work, the way he treated clients, and the results he delivered. Offers of collaboration and interest came in slowly at first, but steadily, reinforcing his confidence that he could rebuild and even improve his professional standing outside the company. He also maintained a quiet observation of the company's interactions with the major client. He noticed mistakes that he had previously handled seamlessly, communication gaps, and delays that could have been avoided. Each observation strengthened his belief that his experience and personal touch were irreplaceable. He began mentally preparing for the moment when he could present himself as a solution, not out of spite, but out of genuine desire to help and demonstrate the value of consistent, dedicated work. The days turned into weeks, and he grew more comfortable with his new routine. Mornings were spent on planning, skill development, and outreach. Afternoons were reserved for research and reflection. Evenings were a time to unwind and recharge, but also to consider long-term strategy. He realized that while losing the job had been painful, it had also provided him with a rare opportunity, the chance to shape his career entirely on his own terms. The uncertainty that had initially felt daunting now seemed like a canvas on which he could design his next chapter. He kept notes on potential opportunities, drafting ideas for services he could provide independently. These notes were detailed, including strategies, potential outcomes, how his experience uniquely positioned him to deliver results. The process of writing and planning became a source of motivation, reinforcing his sense of control over his future. He wasn't waiting for luck or for someone else's recognition. He was actively creating possibilities that aligned with his skills, values, and experience. One afternoon, he received an unexpected email from the client, expressing increasing frustration with the company's current approach. They asked for advice on how to proceed, mentioning that they felt the previous level of service was missing. He responded thoughtfully, offering insights and suggestions without pushing for personal gain. The client appreciated the guidance, clearly recognizing the difference in attention and understanding. It was a subtle confirmation that his skills and relationships were still highly valued. Even outside the structure of his former employer, these interactions gave him renewed energy. He realized that his expertise wasn't tied to any single company. It was transferable, in demand, and respected. The sense of empowerment he felt was unlike anything he had experienced while employed full-time. He was building momentum quietly, deliberately, and strategically, knowing that this foundation could support something much larger than he had ever imagined before. He also learned to trust the process, to understand that results would come from patience, effort, and genuine care for the people he served. By the end of the second part of his journey, he had moved from a place of shock and disappointment to one of strategic thinking and empowerment. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was prepared to navigate it with patience, skill, and integrity. The experiences of being fired and observing the company's struggles had given him clear perspective on what mattered most: relationships, dedication, and consistent, high-quality work. He was ready to take the next steps, quietly preparing for the moment when opportunity and preparation would meet, and he could show the world and the client what true value really looked like. He watched from the sidelines as the client he had nurtured for years began to struggle under the company's new management. Small problems that he had previously handled with ease were now becoming major headaches. Emails went unanswered for days, meetings were disorganized, and deadlines slipped repeatedly. He could see the frustration building in the client's tone during calls and emails to the company. It was a difficult mix of emotions for him. Part of him felt vindicated, quietly reassured that his absence was being noticed. But another part of him felt genuine concern for the client, who had relied on his guidance and expertise for years. He began to consider how he might help without overstepping. He didn't want to act out of spite, and he didn't want to create conflict with his former employer. Yet he knew the client deserved support. He also knew that he could provide solutions that the company had lost with his departure. Carefully, he drafted emails offering advice on strategies they could implement, suggestions on managing projects, and ways to communicate more effectively with the internal teams. He kept his tone professional, helpful, and neutral, never once mentioning that he was no longer with the company. His goal was simple: help the client succeed while maintaining integrity. The client responded almost immediately, grateful for the insights. They appreciated his guidance, mentioning that it had clarified things and helped them move forward in areas that had been stagnant for weeks. The satisfaction of knowing he could still make a difference, even indirectly, brought him a sense of purpose during a time when he had been questioning his direction. Each exchange reinforced the idea that real value came from expertise, reliability, and personal connection, not from a job title or paycheck. As he continued to support the client in subtle ways, he began to realize that his time away from the company was an opportunity to think more broadly about his career. He wasn't just a former employee anymore. He was someone who could carve out a niche, offer services directly, and build something independently. The concept was both exciting and terrifying. Without the structure of a company, everything would depend on his initiative, skill, and perseverance. But he felt ready for the challenge. Armed with years of experience and a deep understanding of how to deliver results, he spent the next few days analyzing the client's situation in detail. He noted the missed opportunities, the lapses in communication, the ways that the company's new approach was failing to meet the client's expectations. He thought carefully about how he could address these issues if he had the chance. Each observation was methodical, detailed, and grounded in his own experience. It wasn't about criticizing the company that had let him go. It was about understanding the problem and preparing a solution. This preparation became a source of motivation, reminding him that he still had valuable skills that could make a real impact. He also began reaching out to other contacts in his professional network. He wanted to explore opportunities without rushing or forcing anything. These conversations were informal at first, often framed as discussions about industry trends or seeking advice. But gradually, people started to recognize the value he could offer outside of a traditional employment setting. Offers of consulting and collaboration began to emerge, small at first, but steadily building momentum. This progress was encouraging, reinforcing the idea that he could succeed independently if he focused on strategy and relationships. Meanwhile, he continued to pay close attention to the client's interactions with the company. Every mistake, delay, or miscommunication was an opportunity to learn and plan. He realized that if he approached the situation thoughtfully, he could offer a solution that would not only help the client, but also demonstrate the true value of his work. This wasn't about revenge. It was about integrity and excellence. He wanted the client to succeed and for the results to speak for themselves, showing that consistent, high-quality effort was irreplaceable in his personal life. He made adjustments to support this new direction. He created a dedicated workspace at home, organized his schedule to allow for focused work, and allocated time for professional development. Each day, he balanced outreach, planning, and skill building. This structure helped him maintain momentum, even when progress seemed slow. He understood that building something new required patience, resilience, and careful attention to detail. Every small step added up, creating a foundation for future opportunities. As the weeks passed, he began to consider a more direct approach with the client. He had observed their struggles, offered guidance, and built trust in subtle ways. Now he thought about presenting himself as a resource, someone who could provide dedicated attention and expertise without the limitations of the company's bureaucracy. He drafted ideas for proposals outlining how he could manage projects, improve communication, and deliver results efficiently. He made sure everything was professional, clear, and focused on the client's needs, avoiding any hint of personal grievance. He also reflected on the lessons he had learned during this time. Being fired had been painful, but it had forced him to evaluate his own capabilities, priorities, and potential. He realized that true professional value was not tied to a single employer. It was in the knowledge he had gained, the skills he had developed, and the relationships he had cultivated. This awareness gave him confidence and a sense of purpose that was deeper than any job title could provide. One afternoon, he scheduled a call with the client. He approached it carefully, presenting himself as someone offering guidance and support, rather than someone seeking to capitalize on their frustration. During the call, he listened attentively, asking questions, clarifying problems, and offering actionable solutions. The client was visibly relieved, expressing gratitude for his insights and acknowledging the difference in understanding and responsiveness compared to the company's current approach. The conversation reinforced his belief that relationships and expertise were far more valuable than any corporate decision to cut costs. Encouraged by the call, he began to think seriously about how he could formalize this new opportunity. He considered creating a small consulting business, focused on providing dedicated, high-quality support to clients who needed attention and expertise that larger companies often failed to deliver. He planned carefully, thinking about pricing, communication strategies, and ways to demonstrate tangible results. Every decision was grounded in his experience, his understanding of client needs, and his desire to deliver real value. He continued to refine his skills, learning about new tools and techniques that could make his services more efficient and effective. He stayed current with industry trends, ensuring that he could offer clients innovative solutions while maintaining the reliability and personal touch that had always been his strength. This combination of expertise and adaptability became a cornerstone of his emerging professional identity. Separate from the company that had let him go, the client situation continued to evolve, and he remained involved in small but meaningful ways. He provided guidance on project management, communication strategies, and workflow improvements. Each successful recommendation reinforced the client's trust and demonstrated the tangible impact of his work. He was careful to maintain professionalism and avoid any appearance of undermining his former employer. His focus was entirely on results and the client's success. As his reputation grew, he began receiving inquiries from other clients who had heard about his expertise. These opportunities were smaller at first, but they were meaningful. They allowed him to test his approach, refine his services, and build confidence in his ability to operate independently. Each successful engagement strengthened his credibility and expanded his network, creating a foundation for a sustainable professional path outside of traditional employment. Throughout this period, he maintained a mindset of patience and observation. He understood that meaningful results required time, consistent effort, and attention to detail. He avoided rushing or forcing outcomes, focusing instead on building trust, demonstrating competence, and creating tangible improvements for clients. This approach not only reinforced his professional integrity, but also positioned him for long-term success. By the end of this stage, he had transitioned from being a former employee to someone with a clear vision for independent work. He had observed the client's challenges, provided meaningful guidance, and begun to receive recognition for his expertise outside the company. He had learned that value could not be dismissed even by decisions made in corporate boardrooms. The path forward was challenging, but it was also full of potential, and he was ready to pursue it with focus, integrity, and determination. He had spent weeks quietly observing, learning, and helping in small ways, and now he felt ready to take the next step. The client's situation had become more urgent. Projects were delayed, communication was inconsistent, and frustration was mounting. He knew that he could provide the guidance and hands-on attention they needed, and he began planning how to approach them directly. His goal was simple: offer solutions without drama, without revenge, and with the same dedication he had always shown. He wanted to show the value of experience, trust, and consistent effort. He started by drafting a detailed proposal for the client. It outlined ways to improve communication, manage projects more efficiently, and deliver better results without overcomplicating processes. Every suggestion was based on his previous experience with the client and his deep understanding of their needs. He made sure the tone was professional and helpful, avoiding any criticism of the company that had let him go. He wanted the client to see him as a resource, not as someone trying to undermine anyone. The proposal was practical, clear, focused entirely on solving problems that had been accumulating for weeks. When he sent the proposal, he was careful to frame it as guidance for the client, emphasizing that his intent was to help them succeed. He didn't expect an immediate response. Instead, he waited patiently, knowing that trust and respect are earned through actions, not words. Within a few days, the client responded, expressing relief and gratitude. They explained that they had been struggling with the company's recent changes, and that his advice was exactly what they needed to get back on track. The relief in their words was palpable, and it reminded him why he had always taken such care in his work. Real impact comes from attention to detail, reliability, and understanding the people you serve. From that point forward, he began working more closely with the client. He provided advice, suggested solutions, and helped them navigate challenges that had previously caused stress and delays. Every interaction reinforced their trust in him. The client was surprised by how much smoother operations became with his involvement, and they began to appreciate the personal attention and expertise he brought to every decision. He felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that his work was making a real difference, even though he was doing it outside the structure of a company. At the same time, he continued to expand his own professional presence. He reached out to other contacts and explored consulting opportunities, carefully balancing his workload to ensure he could deliver consistent quality. He refined his methods, developed new strategies, and adapted to each client's unique needs. Each successful engagement reinforced his confidence and demonstrated that his skills were valuable in ways the company that had fired him could not replicate. This period of growth and focus became a turning point in his career, where he transitioned from being an employee to being a trusted professional with his own direction. He noticed that the company that had let him go was struggling to manage the client. Projects continued to slip, deadlines were missed, and the client's frustration grew. He didn't gloat, but he observed carefully. Every mistake, every miscommunication confirmed what he already knew: consistent. Dedicated attention and expertise are hard to replace. This observation strengthened his resolve to continue offering high quality service and showed him that his skills and relationships were truly irreplaceable. The client began to rely on him more and more, not as an employee, but as a consultant and trusted advisor. They valued his guidance, sought his input on major decisions, and credited him with bringing clarity to complex situations. The bond he had built over years now translated into real trust and influence, demonstrating that the quality of work and attention to relationships matter far more than corporate titles or cost-cutting decisions. His commitment to helping the client without seeking personal revenge showed professionalism, integrity, and reliability, the very qualities that made him indispensable. During this period, he also spent time refining his consulting approach. He thought carefully about pricing, service structure, and ways to demonstrate measurable impact. He wanted to ensure that every engagement reflected his values and provided genuine solutions. His work became more structured, more deliberate, and more focused on results. He realized that independence required discipline, planning, and the ability to deliver consistent quality without the support of a corporate structure. Each small success reinforced his belief in his capabilities and motivated him to continue expanding his professional reach as he became more involved with the client. He also began to receive referrals and inquiries from other businesses who had heard about his expertise. These opportunities were smaller at first, but they allowed him to build experience in consulting, adapt to different industries, and refine his methods. Every engagement added credibility and demonstrated that his knowledge and approach were valuable beyond a single company or client. Slowly, he was building a reputation as someone who could deliver results reliably, efficiently, and with a human touch that larger organizations often overlooked. He spent his days balancing client work, research, and outreach, ensuring that he stayed on top of trends and new strategies in his field. This proactive approach allowed him to offer innovative solutions, keep his clients informed, and maintain a competitive edge. He realized that independence required continuous learning, adaptability, and attention to both detail and big-picture thinking. The skills and discipline he had cultivated over years in a corporate setting now empowered him to operate effectively on his own terms. One day, during a particularly challenging project for the client, he solved an issue that had been causing delays for weeks. The client was amazed at how quickly and effectively he had addressed the problem. Their relief and gratitude were palpable, and it reminded him of why he had invested so much care into his work over the years. The experience reinforced the idea that trust and competence are built over time, and that genuine dedication can create lasting impact even outside traditional employment context. This success also marked a turning point in his relationship with the client. They began to see him not only as a resource, but as an essential partner in their operations. His guidance improved workflows, communication, and project delivery, demonstrating tangible results. The client's confidence in him grew. They began discussing longer-term plans and collaborations that had not been possible before. It was a moment of validation, showing that his expertise and dedication could create meaningful change without relying on corporate support. At the same time, he continued to monitor the company's interaction with the client. They were struggling to maintain the same level of service he had provided, missing deadlines and failing to communicate effectively. He observed these challenges quietly, focusing instead on his work with the client. Each misstep reinforced the value of his approach. Personal attention, consistency, and expertise can never truly be replaced by cost-cutting or internal shortcuts. This awareness fueled his motivation and strengthened his resolve to continue building his own path. Over the following weeks, he formalized his consulting services. He created clear processes, set expectations, and developed tools to help clients manage projects more effectively. He also maintained strong communication channels, ensuring that clients received timely updates and practical solutions. Each step was designed to demonstrate reliability, professionalism, and tangible impact. The process allowed him to operate independently while maintaining the quality and attention to detail that had always defined his work. As he continued to provide solutions and guidance, the client's operations began to stabilize. Projects moved forward on schedule, communication improved, and frustration diminished. The client recognized the difference and expressed gratitude for his involvement. This feedback reinforced his sense of purpose and highlighted the importance of delivering consistent, high-quality work. He felt a quiet pride, knowing that his dedication had made a meaningful difference and that he was now operating in a space where his contributions were fully appreciated. Throughout this time, he also balanced the demands of building his independent work with ongoing learning and skill development. He explored new methods, tools, and strategies, ensuring that his approach remained current and effective. He read industry publications, participated in online forums, and engaged with other professionals to exchange ideas. This proactive approach allowed him to continually refine his services and offer clients innovative, practical solutions. The combination of experience, adaptability, and dedication became the foundation of his growing success. By the end of this phase, he had transformed from a former employee, struggling with the shock of being fired, into a trusted advisor and independent professional. He had taken deliberate steps to provide meaningful solutions, support his client, and establish a reputation for reliability and expertise. The journey had not been easy, but each challenge had reinforced his confidence and demonstrated the power of patience, persistence, and integrity. He was now poised for the next chapter, ready to fully leverage his skills and relationships to achieve even greater success. By the time he was ready for the final step, he had quietly built momentum, trust, and confidence. The client's operations were improving steadily under his guidance, and the value he provided was undeniable. The company that had fired him continued to struggle, missing deadlines and frustrating the client in ways that were becoming increasingly costly. He didn't feel satisfaction in their struggle. Rather, he felt a quiet understanding that real value cannot be ignored. Experience, care, and consistent attention to detail create outcomes that no cost-cutting measure can replace. He prepared for a direct conversation with the client, carefully planning every word and approach. He wanted to offer a formal arrangement to work with them as a dedicated consultant, someone who could ensure stability, communication, and results without the inconsistencies of their current arrangement. He drafted proposals, considered pricing, and thought about how to position his services as an essential support system for their ongoing projects. Everything was professional, practical, and focused on their needs rather than his own ambitions. His goal was to empower the client and provide them with solutions that truly worked. The day he presented his offer, he felt a calm confidence. He had spent months observing, learning, helping, and preparing. Now, it was time to step forward. During the call, he explained the challenges he had noticed, proposed concrete solutions, and outlined how he could work with them to prevent future issues. He spoke with clarity, professionalism, and authenticity. The client listened intently, and by the end of the conversation, it was clear that they recognized his unique value. They expressed immediate interest in formalizing the arrangement, acknowledging that they had struggled to find someone who truly understood their needs in the way he did. As the weeks progressed, he began working formally as the client's consultant. The transformation was noticeable almost immediately. Projects that had been stalled were moving smoothly again. Communication was clear and proactive. Deadlines were met consistently, and the client's frustration began to fade. They expressed gratitude repeatedly, emphasizing how much his presence and expertise had changed the situation. He felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that his efforts were making a tangible difference. This was not about proving a point. It was about delivering real results and demonstrating the power of dedication and skill. Meanwhile, he received updates from others in his professional network. Word had spread quietly about the impact he was having, and new inquiries began to arrive. Some were small local businesses, others were larger, more established companies. Each opportunity was approached thoughtfully, ensuring that he could provide consistent quality and maintain his growing reputation for reliability and results. He realized that independence came with responsibility, but it also came with the freedom to shape his work around his values and principles. As he balanced multiple projects, he noticed the stark contrast between the results he was achieving independently and the struggles of the company that had fired him. They had lost their most valuable client to a situation they could have prevented, simply by failing to recognize the importance of expertise, consistency, and personal attention. While it might have been tempting to feel vindicated, he focused instead on the lessons learned. True value is demonstrated through action and trust, not titles or short-term cost-cutting measures. The client became more dependent on his insights and proactive management. He helped implement systems to prevent delays, improved communication workflows, and ensured that every project had clear accountability. Over time, the client regained confidence in their operations, feeling secure in the knowledge that someone with deep experience and commitment was guiding them. Each small success reinforced the trust they had in him and highlighted the importance of his contributions. The results were measurable, visible, and undeniable. With the client's needs stabilized, he began expanding his services more broadly. He continued to build relationships, taking on new clients cautiously to maintain the quality and attention to detail that had become his trademark. Each engagement reinforced his reputation as someone who delivers results, earns trust, and genuinely cares about the people he serves. Unlike his former employment, where recognition was often limited to corporate metrics, here his value was seen directly in the outcomes he produced. This clarity was both empowering and motivating, giving him a sense of control and purpose he had never experienced before. He also began reflecting on his journey. Being fired had been painful, a moment that shook his confidence and forced him to confront uncertainty. But it had also created space for growth, reflection, and the pursuit of meaningful work on his own terms. He realized that setbacks can be opportunities in disguise. His ability to respond thoughtfully, maintain integrity, focus on results, had allowed him to turn a negative situation into one of the most successful chapters of his career. The lessons he had learned about patience, observation, and dedication were invaluable, shaping both his professional and personal outlook. During this time, he continued to document processes, create systems, and refine his approach. He built resources for clients, designed workflows, and developed strategies that were both practical and sustainable. Every detail mattered, and he approached each task with the same care he had applied for years. Now, with the added benefit of autonomy, this attention to detail and dedication to results reinforced the trust clients placed in him, allowing his reputation to grow steadily. As months passed, the impact of his work became undeniable. The client he had once managed under the company was now thriving under his guidance. Projects were consistently delivered on time, communication was smooth, and overall satisfaction had risen dramatically. They spoke highly of him to others in their network, leading to new opportunities and referrals. His influence was no longer limited to a single role. It extended across multiple projects, industries, and clients. Each benefiting from his expertise and dedication, he occasionally received updates about the company that had let him go. They had lost not only their key client, but also other opportunities because of mismanagement and inefficiency. While he didn't dwell on this, it served as a quiet reminder of the importance of recognizing real value and investing in people who deliver results. It also reinforced his belief that integrity, consistency, and dedication will ultimately create success, even when others failed to see it immediately. With his consulting work fully established, he began planning for the future. He envisioned expanding his services, taking on more clients, and creating systems that could scale without compromising quality. Each step was deliberate, ensuring that he could maintain the level of attention and reliability that had become his hallmark. He understood that success was not just about growth. It was about building sustainable, meaningful impact for those he served in the end. The journey from being fired to becoming a trusted independent consultant was transformative. He had turned a moment of disappointment into an opportunity for growth, learning, and empowerment. His focus on relationships, attention to detail, and commitment to excellence had allowed him to rebuild his career in a way that was both fulfilling and impactful. The client's success, the respect he earned, and the opportunities he created were the true measure of his value. Reflecting on everything, he realized that being let go was not the end, but a pivotal moment that redirected his path. He had discovered that real influence and success are earned through action, dedication, and genuine care for others. The experience taught him resilience, strategy, and the power of quietly demonstrating value through results. As he looked ahead, he felt confident, purposeful, and ready to embrace the opportunities that lay ahead, knowing that his skills, integrity, and commitment would guide him to continued success.